Ever since Rachel Becker was a little girl, she dreamt of marrying the perfect man. Her teacher was so pleased with her artistic rendition of a man that she helped find art schools for Rachel. Now a skilled sculptor and teacher in New York City, Rachel continues to search for her soulmate with unrelenting hope. She keeps swiping left on Tinder because no one is good enough for her. Rachel's mother, Judith, is overbearing and constantly tries to set her daughter up with successful men like doctors and lawyers. One day, while visiting Rachel's sculpting classroom, Judith spots a large statue and expresses interest in seeing her daughter's artwork. However, Rachel is hesitant to share her work with her pushy mother and pushes her away. That night, Rachel is supposed to showcase her students' creations at an event. However, her family and other guests crash the event. To make matters worse, her mother announces to everyone that Rachel will showcase her own work. Rachel protests, saying that the event is about her students and not about her. It is revealed that Rachel has not shown her creations to anyone since receiving a bad review. As the family talks about her displaying her creations, Ben, Ruth's fiancé, arrives and brings David, his comedian friend. Ben invites Rachel to watch David's show later, but Judith says that Rachel might have other plans. Knowing that her mother is scheming again, she asks. Rachel's mother brings a cardiologist with her, hoping to set Rachel up, much to Rachel's annoyance. Despite her reluctance, Rachel gives Dr. Paff a tour and enlightens him about the philosophy behind one of her students' burger and fries sculpture, but he fails to understand art in the same way Rachel does. Rachel explains further that the artwork represents the student's desire to eat fast food because she is not allowed to do so by her parents. Ben says that people take things for granted, but the doctor still doesn't get it. Rachel goes back to her family circle and tells her mom that she asked the doctor to leave. Frustrated with her mother's pushy behavior regarding her dating life, Rachel tells her to back off or else she'll adopt many cats and never leave her apartment. David makes a light joke about it and makes Rachel laugh. She leaves the event feigning a headache. Her mom, sister, father, and future brother-in-law stare blankly at her. As she is walking home, she passes by Doris, who is her neighbor and friend. They go home to drink and bond. They talk about love and relationships. Rachel's criteria for a boyfriend are quite high, as she seeks out someone kind, intelligent, loyal, devoted, and romantic, and who has the same views as her. Having grown up observing her parents' conflict-free marriage, Rachel yearns for an idealized version of love and marriage. Doris tells her that her standards are unrealistic. Rachel shares with Doris that she created the sculpture to enter a contest with the theme of creating the perfect, realistic man. She explains that she meticulously crafted every detail of clay to match her ideal man, including his physical appearance, personality traits, and interests. Doris is amazed by the sculpture and praises Rachel's talent. Doris shares with Rachel the Jewish folklore of the golem, where rabbis create men out of clay to protect them during the war. Rachel jokes that it might even be helpful for washing dishes. As a fun gesture, Doris gifts Rachel a green amulet necklace that supposedly brings Golem to life when worn. Initially, Rachel is skeptical but agrees to indulge in some harmless fun. As thunder rumbles in the background, Rachel makes a joke about the statue winking, and they both share a laugh. David Cohen, a former lawyer turned stand-up comedian, has a crush on Rachel. However, Rachel's sister Ruth discourages him due to Rachel's high standards. Moreover, Rachel's mother Judith doesn't seem to approve of David either because of his profession as a comedian. Hearing that, David feels hopeless pursuing Rachel. He goes home to his nephew playing the flute. Turns out that David has been tasked by her sister to help his nephew with the LSAT. The next morning, Rachel's mother visits her apartment and informs her that she has set up 4 dates for her at her sister's wedding. Rachel is not pleased with the idea and expresses her disinterest, but Judith insists that she must go unless she finds a date on her own. As usual, Rachel goes to work looking for potential dates. When she enters the studio unsuspectingly, she greets Clay but suddenly hears a man speak. Rachel is surprised when she finds a half-man in her classroom who claims to be Clay, the statue she sculpted, who has come to life. His body is like a Greek sculpture. Rachel finds out if the magic worked by looking at her own signature behind Clay's ear, and her initials are there. A student enters and Rachel instructs her student to go out and explore instead of attending her classes, because he is interviewing the model for their next class. Rachel still cannot believe what is happening, and while she is pondering, Clay gives her coffee exactly how Rachel likes it. It's followed by a really good massage. Confused by this discovery, Rachel calls Doris to share the news and requests to bring clothes for Clay. Doris comes and they both marvel at the Clay man's transformation. Clay dresses up in a Hawaiian shirt and feels very hungry. Doris brings out a bag of rougelets and feeds him his first food. Clay is very pleased with the pastry. However, Rachel is unsure what to do with Clay until Doris casually suggests taking him to Ruth's wedding. However, Rachel is not liking the idea of bringing him because he is not a usual human. It will be difficult to hold a normal human conversation since Clay has no personality and no hobbies like fishing. Eager, Clay says that his hobby is being with Rachel and he will fish thousands of fish for her. Finally, Rachel is convinced but has to take Clay shopping first. They shop around New York and Rachel buys him a hot dog. Because Clay was literally born yesterday, he thought the hot dog is made of dogs, which made Rachel laugh. David goes on his show and jokes about his experience being his family's disappointment. He goes to Ben and wants to invite Ruth and her sister to Ben's bachelor party. Ben is weirded out about bringing his fiancée to a bachelor party, then realizes that David wants to hang out with Rachel. David expresses that he really likes Rachel because she is funny and sassy. However, Ben thinks it is not a good idea, not because David is subpar, but because Rachel is just very picky. They are supposed to go out. However, Ruth texts Ben to practice their first dance. Sad, he leaves Ben alone, disappointed. In Rachel's apartment, she goes over what Clay will say in front of her parents. Clay will say that he's going to law school because Judith is very concerned about having a stable future with a very good job. However, Clay voices out that lawyers are paid to argue and he doesn't want to argue with Rachel. Clay turns out to be everything Rachel ever wanted in a man. He is sensitive, understanding, and deeply in love with her. Rachel cannot help but feel flattered by Clay's attention. They work together to create a backstory and identity for Clay, and Rachel trains him on how to behave and what to say when he is introduced to others. Rachel feels really good about Clay and still can't believe what is happening. Then, Clay kisses Rachel and says that it's the best kiss he ever had, even if it is his first kiss. At her sister's wedding, Mark and Judith talk about Rachel. Judith finds a date for Rachel because she thinks it is a bad sign that her younger sister is marrying first before Rachel. Mark tells his wife that Rachel will find someone deserving in the future. Just then, David appears wearing a suit. Judith says something sarcastic about him not wearing a hoodie. Rachel then walks towards them in a pretty floral dress and David compliments her. She is fluttering at David's comment but places it aside. She introduces Clay, to her parents' surprise. Clay seems excited as he shakes their hands, including David, who comments on his firm handshake. Judith and Mark give each other the side eye and can't believe Rachel actually has a date. Rachel and Clay successfully convince her parents and David that they are a couple who met in one of Rachel's evening sculpting classes. Instantly, Clay is attracted to her, not only to her beauty, but to her confidence and skill. Rachel claims that Clay is creating a flower vase. While cooking the vase, they talk about things and hit it off. Rachel and Clay finish their story with a kiss. Mark says that he will have to reshuffle the seating arrangements. David jokes about being seated with him at the kids' table, but Judith says it's full. When Judith asks about Clay's last name, Rachel has not thought about giving Clay a name. She makes up his name on the spot when she sees gold necklaces and a fish being served. Rachel rumbles on naming Clay Goldfisher, then goes on to reveal that Gold is Clay's stage name because he is a model. They impress the parents more by saying that Clay is earning to go to law school. Mark says that Clay should go to David if he needs help with the law entrance exam. However, Clay doesn't know what LSAT is and what it is for. Mark and David clarify what it is and Clay happily says that he knows and is just testing them. They laugh at his adoring joke. Judith and Mark are thrilled that Rachel has finally found someone. Mark pulls Clay for a while to introduce him to other lawyers to widen his network. Judith is amazed and approves of Clay. During the wedding, Ben and Ruth tied the knot in a Jewish tradition. Ben steps on the bag of glass to signify that they are married. At the wedding reception, Rachel tells Clay to stay there and just eat while she leaves before the wedding toast. Clay obliged and started eating a whole platter of finger foods. Meanwhile, Rachel prepares to give a speech and goes to the other hall practicing. David follows and suggests that she should insert a funny line. David offers to help her, but Rachel initially declines before eventually accepting his offer. She successfully delivers the speech with jokes that David helped her with. After that, Rachel thanks David and they form a connection. Clay comes back appreciating all the good food and David leaves. David and Ben watch the couple dance, as David can't believe that the picky woman has picked someone. Ben tells him to get it over with and tries to ship Ruth's cousin with him, saying that beggars can't be choosers. David says he will just focus on his comedy instead of finding love because it is just distracting. Ben reminds him that he is at his wedding. Rachel slowly dances romantically, and she feels that the moment is magical. They both smile sweetly at each other and are very happy at the moment. Ben and Ruth move into their new apartment. Rachel comes to help without Clay because of an ad shooting. Rachel helps Clay boost his modeling career by setting up his Instagram account. Surprisingly, David arrives, bringing rougelach, Rachel's favorite pastry. Ruth complains about the donuts that they were supposed to bring, but both David and Rachel say in unison that rougelach is better than donuts. Rachel tastes the fig and dates flavored rougelach, which she does not like. However, Rachel likes chocolate better. They have a light-hearted debate. The flavor David has brought is not good. Ben and Ruth leave them alone so they can buy donuts. As they talk, Clay arrives with baked chocolate rougelach and Rachel loves it. She is even more amazed when Clay says that he baked it himself. David just looks at them flirting with envy and is about to leave the two so he can practice for his show. Clay asks what show and learns that it is a comedy show. Clay suggests they go to David's comedy show, and Rachel reluctantly agrees. To her surprise, she finds David to be incredibly funny. Since Clay is new to the world, he does not know yet what is funny or not. David's material is mostly based on his experiences with his Jewish family. Rachel and Clay walk under a snowy night. Clay shows him that his jeans ad is printed on a large billboard near Rachel's studio. She is proud of him and promises to look for a better place for him to stay. Going home, David's nephew moving out of his apartment worked out perfectly, as it coincided with Rachel's search for a suitable place for Clay to stay. As soon as Clay saw the apartment, he knew it was perfect for him. David is experiencing jealousy as he observes the girl he has feelings for bonding with her new boyfriend. As he has only recently become human, he is fully devoted to loving Rachel and doesn't behave like a typical person. The day goes on and Clay continues to bring joy to Rachel by baking her pastries, which has become his passion. During Rachel's visit to the men's apartment, she feels embarrassed by Clay's cooking mess and apologizes to David while helping clean up. Rachel and David bonded over their shared Jewish culture and their struggles with disapproving parents. Despite David's tendency to be blunt, sarcastic, and annoying, Rachel found herself developing feelings for him. However, Doris advises her to keep Clay because she's his purpose. Doris makes her realize that breaking up with him will make the golem return to being a statue. During a dinner with Rachel's parents, Clay announces that he wants to attend culinary school instead of pursuing law, which displeases Judith as she believes it would ruin his future. Mark tries to defend Clay's decision, but ultimately, Clay gives in. As they are leaving, Judith pulls Clay aside and presents him with her family's heirloom ring, encouraging him to propose to Rachel. He feels like he's over the moon, and so, Clay agrees. David decides to take Rachel's night classes, and as the students work on their sculptures, Rachel notices that David was struggling with his. He is trying to create a realistic sculpture of a dog because he has always wanted one as a pet. So, Rachel decides to showcase her exceptional talent and skill in sculpting by creating a lifelike dog sculpture. Impressed with the result, David appreciates her a lot. Rachel invites David to her studio and shows him the other amazing sculptures she made. Rachel also reveals that she is considering entering the Center of Contemporary Art Design contest, but is hesitant to do so. David encourages her to stop hesitating and to participate in the contest, no matter what the outcome may be. However, Rachel is not satisfied with David's response and berates him, stating that he can never understand what it was like to be picked apart and judged for one's work. David leaves and goes home. David complains about him having problems with women. Because Clay has no experience with women, he thinks that women did something bad to David. But David explains what bothers him, especially with the girl he likes. Clay blurts out that Rachel is different because she is perfect. Exasperated, David says that nobody is perfect, and that includes Rachel. This slightly infuriates Clay. Using what he learns from studying law, Clay disagrees with David and says that Rachel is perfect. Still, David holds on to his belief that having flaws are okay. It did not convince Clay any further. David calms Clay down. When he relaxes, he finds Clay with his old law books and discovers that Clay has decided to forego culinary school in favor of law school to please Rachel. Clay still likes cooking, but it will just be a hobby. He eats the sushi Clay made and compliments him on his perfect cooking. Clay and David develop a strong bromance and become close friends. Back in the studio, Rachel rants to Doris about what happened between her and David. She thinks that David is insulting her for being a coward. Doris asks what Clay's opinion is. Rachel says that they have not talked about it because it does not matter, so Doris asks Rachel why she's still talking about it. Meanwhile, at a comedy bar, David receives great news that he has been nominated to join Laugh Fest, where he will showcase his comedic talent. To top it off, he meets a beautiful woman and they start dating, making David even happier. Rachel sees through social media that David is dating happily. One day, Clay visits Rachel with coffee, then notices that she looks worried. Rachel tells him about the art contest that she is thinking of joining. She's scared about it, and so Clay tells him not to submit it. He thinks that worrying about something is negative and she should not join the contest. After much contemplation, Rachel finally decides to participate in the expo for emerging artists. She gets into the zone and pours her heart and soul into creating a masterpiece. As Clay studies for LSAT, he discovers that cooking is his true passion. At David's apartment, Rachel and Clay are cuddling on the couch. Clay asks about the date and David says it is terrific, then subtly hints that the girl is different from Rachel. David then reveals that he will perform for the Laughs Fest but doesn't talk about it because he does not want to be too excited about it. Rachel tells him that he'll get into, which David replies that he will not know if he does not try. This is a hint to encourage Rachel to be brave. Clay plans to cook pancakes for their breakfast as David requests syrup and then leaves. Rachel watches Clay continue watching a cooking video and just sighs, thinking of what David has said. Anxiously, Rachel is anticipating the results, and to her delight, her work is selected for display in the competition. At a small gathering in Rachel's apartment, Rachel and her family are overjoyed with her success and proud of her. Judith thinks that Clay has done something to inspire Rachel, but Rachel claims that it is David who pushed her, to everyone's surprise. They all toast to her successor. On the same night, David goes on a date with the girl. However, as David answers her questions about the prize for joining Laughs Fest, she increasingly becomes disheartened that David won't gain anything material other than exposure and more jobs. Rachel calls David to thank him for believing in her. Rachel gives David a call and breaks the news that their respective events are happening on the same night, which means she won't be able to attend his performance. David says it is okay. Meanwhile, David's date has abandoned him. However, Doris notices Rachel's sadness and realizes that she is actually in love with David, not Clay. Judith urges Clay to propose to Rachel that night during the sculpture contest and gives him the family heirloom ring. That night, David is preparing for his comedy set, but he is very nervous. Clay reveals to David that he is proposing to Rachel that night. The men hug tightly and support each other. On the other side, Rachel and Doris talk about David. Doris apologizes for telling Rachel not to follow her heart. On the night of the events, David's nephew is seen playing the flute. He's finally following his dream. Rachel unveils her creation, a beautiful sculpture depicting the little girl she was, with her small sculpted man, a poignant scene that was shown at the beginning of the movie. The museum director looks impressed at her work and asks about her inspiration. Then she explains the motivation behind her creation to the museum director, expressing a desire to return to a simpler time, when she was a young girl. She thought she knew who she was and what she wanted, but ended up lost. The museum director appears to be impressed by her explanation and agrees with her. At David's show, Doris urges him to go to Rachel's event because she knows he still loves her. David hesitates, aware that Clay plans to propose to Rachel that night, but Doris implores him not to let his feelings go unspoken. She tells him that he will regret it if he doesn't act on his feelings at that moment. David is about to go on stage but is still lingering about what Doris has said. At the museum, Rachel is announced as the winner of the contest. In the middle of her acceptance speech, Clay suddenly interrupts and proposes to her. He expresses that he wants her to be happy. Thus, he pops open the ring. However, their moment is cut short when David arrives, having ditched the Laugh Fest to express his love for Rachel. Everyone is shocked by the spectacle. David passionately tells Rachel that she is imperfect but he will always be there for her, challenging her to face her fears. Clay then steps in and tells Rachel that he may not be able to do what David has suggested, but he will always support her and prioritize her happiness. Judith continues to push Clay towards Rachel despite Mark's objections, but he finally snaps and reveals that their marriage has not been perfect and shiny. They have had their struggles and arguments, but have always hidden them from their children, which he believes was a mistake. Judith begins telling Rachel that her parents often fight and don't want that for her children. However, Judith is not deterred and insists that Rachel marry Clay, especially now that he has been accepted into Harvard Law. Rachel reaches a breaking point and confronts Judith about trying to mold people into what she wants them to be. This leads Rachel to realize that she had been creating a version of Clay that she wanted. She talks to Clay and ends their relationship, as she realizes he is no longer the right person for her. Clay tries to remove the amulet, but Rachel stops him and encourages him to pursue his true passion, cooking. By going to culinary school, Clay agrees and decides to start a new chapter in his life. As Clay leaves with Mark, David approaches Rachel and gives her the wilted flowers. Rachel and David then have a heart-to-heart about their feelings for each other, and share a kiss after the sentimental conversation. All the characters in the movie end up with their desired happy ending. Rachel's sister gives birth to triplets, her parents find new adventures, Clay becomes a successful chef, and David performs at Laugh Fest. Rachel and David also find love in each other. They are happily imperfect.